My name's Ben McKenzie, and I've been asked today to talk about carbon, but specifically the work that AgriFutures has done in the carbon space and the resources that we have on carbon. Where can you find those resources too? So I'll be showing you our website and how to find those resources, and also what we're looking to do in the future in carbon. So about today, we've just done our Dial in our doggo, which is great that you all got to meet my dog. I'm then going to run through our website, so the AgriFutures website, and how to access our resources, and I'll use carbon as the example. I'm then going to go through two key carbon projects that I've done that I think would be relevant to the people in the room today. And then I'm going to go about discussing what are we looking at in the carbon space now that we've delivered a pretty significant program on carbon? What are our next steps in this? And that's looking at the Carbon Conversation series that we ran. And then we'll have a little bit of time at the end to talk about how you can interact with our resources, how you can share that with your growers, how you can participate in any of the projects that we have coming up. So before I get started, I thought I'd better just quickly do an introductory slide on myself. So you've already met Alaska, but for myself and my role, I'm the manager of new enterprises at AgriFutures. And what that means is I look to identify new revenue streams for farmers along or with traditional and non-traditional pathways. So traditional being your farming diversification practices, the adoption of ag tech, and non-traditional being looking at the environmental markets. So carbon is a very timely topic there, looking at renewables, waste management, byproduct commercialisation, biofuels. For a bit more context for myself, I used to manage 9 farms across Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia. So they were cropping farms. We grew lamb, we had wool, cattle. I had Australia's largest wattle seed orchard under management for food. And so that's my background. I used to manage those 9 farms. But the interesting piece was every one of those farms had either a carbon project or a biodiversity project on them. So we had 2 additional revenue streams to our agriculture commodity. We had whether it was carbon, whether it was biodiversity, or whether it was a combination of the 2. And we did really well in that space, in diversifying our practices and targeting that environmental market space. Then in between jobs, so between that farm management role and my current AgriFutures role, I did a bit of private carbon consulting. So I worked with local farmers throughout the New South Wales region to do a basic emissions baseline and look at their practices and look at ways that they could just tweak their practices to begin reducing their emissions. So I wasn't asking for major capital investments into planting millions and millions of trees. I wasn't saying let's go carbon neutral, but they were farmers that were interested in, okay, this is coming down the pipeline. How do we interact in this space? Let's get an initial reading. And then what small things can we change to reduce our emissions? So for example, one farmer, he would do excessive number of trips transporting his sheep to the sale yards. And we were able to reduce that literally down to 25% of what he was currently doing, and that reduced his emissions significantly. And so it was looking at those sorts of things, not looking at, okay, you've got 500 hectares under management, let's plant out 300 hectares, etc. So that was the type of carbon consulting I was doing. And so now I currently work for AgriFutures, and it's a little bit interesting that AgriFutures can talk so broadly to carbon. So I thought I'd better give you just a bit of context as to why I'm able to talk broadly to carbon. So AgriFutures is one of Australia's 15 research and development corporations. So very much like your Meat and Livestock Australia, your GRDC, your Hort Innovation, those are research and development corporations. And so we represent a group of 13 industries that pay a levy. And that levy comes to us and we target research and development to deliver into their specific needs. So the 13 industries that we represent are seen on this slide in the yellow, with the major ones being chicken, rice, export fodder, and pasture seeds. Now, What is unique about AgriFutures is that we also receive appropriated funds from the Commonwealth to support industries that are too small to pay a levy, so they don't meet the requirements of a levied industry, but they are in the process of developing and growing to that space. So these can be seen in the blue, and essentially we do strategic investments to support their growth to become a levied industry where they can fund their own research. Now, why we can talk about carbon is we've been given the cross-sector remit across the RDC. So we have what's called the Rural Futures Team, or the cross-sector team. And this team looks to address national challenges and opportunities facing Australia's rural industries. So this is where I fit into the picture. So I fit into the Identifying New Revenue Streams team. But we also have two other teams within the Rural Futures broader team. So we have our collaboration team that looks to foster collaboration across all the different research organisations and RDCs. And we also have our National Challenges and Opportunities team, which looks to identify, understand, respond to national challenges and opportunities. And carbon is one of those big ones that was identified. And so we decided to deliver a program of research into carbon a couple of years ago, and so that's what I'd like to talk about today. So, as I'm sure many of you are experiencing at the moment, carbon is a bit of a dog's breakfast. There's everything going on. Every person and their dog are talking about carbon. It's the good, it's the bad, it's the ugly. It almost feels a little bit like a gold rush. Everyone's rushing to this. They're looking for the silver bullet or the golden ticket, how they're going to make all this money. And that's what the carbon market currently feels like at the moment. But what's going on? What's actually going on? And so AgriFutures decided a couple of years ago to make an investment which we called the Carbon Initiative Program. And so this Carbon Initiative Program was a $2 million investment across 15 carbon projects to explore novel approaches to storing carbon, to look at emissions reduction, to look at driving awareness in this space and what do producers actually need to know, to overcome any barriers that they might be facing, and to develop market pathways for producers. And so I just thought I would play this 3-minute video as it does a really good summary of those 15 projects. So Dan, I'll just click play. Let me know if you can hear this.
Everything starts from here.
We're seeing increased soil fertility, carbon levels, and increases in biological activity as well.
I think this can have global implications because it's the first study that's directly measured, emissions from irrigation dams.
As far as I know, no one's tried this. This is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of where we could take this research.
AgriFutures invested early in this technology. We demonstrated the carbon potential. And then in that process, we won the X Prize for Carbon Removal, milestone award, $1 million. That's a game changer.
Farmers need other farmers to learn and to engage.
It's exciting times being in agriculture at the moment.
As Australia and the world move to net zero, we as a region can show that we're doing our bit.
The key question is, what have been the experiences when it comes to carbon farming?
The clear message that we get is one of confusion about what the real opportunities are.
The biggest challenge as the valuers operating in the carbon space is firstly gaining a knowledge of what is essentially a new market.
We looked at what type of nudges would farmers need to actually start engaging with carbon farming. You've got to have an economic opportunity, and that's very much what this project's about.
So how do you maximize opportunity and capture value from the net zero transition? I'm going to give you some insights from our work.
We saw that soil carbon was really emerging as an opportunity for landholders in the carbon farming space.
And carbon sequestration, it has great potential. And that potential, it's still untapped. The money that we invest in this thing will pay.
AgriFutures basically kicked off a lot of innovation work in this space. We wanted to get to a point where this data starts to kind of genuinely empower farmers.
I think ongoing research in this area is very important for Australian agriculture as we approach 2050 and net zero.
We're going to see carbon farming become far more widespread across Australia over the next decade or so.
Anything that we can do to leave our farm in a good state for the next generation is worthwhile thinking about.
So that was just a very broad overview of the 15 projects that we did as a part of that, that Carbon Initiative program. And so what I've been asked to do today is to show everyone here how you can access these resources that we've delivered on in this carbon space. So this is actually where the fun begins, when we try and do a live demonstration, and hopefully everything goes smoothly. But I thought what I'd do is I'd bring our website over and then basically step you through how you can find carbon, and then this will show you also how to find other resources that you're interested in too. So can you see this? This is good. Great. So this is the AgriFutures website. I sent the link in the chat before. And basically this is the home page. So this is what you see if you open it up, and it can also be found literally just typing in AgriFutures into Google. It'll be the top one there, really easy. So this is our home page. We have 5 different categories across the top. We have about, so that's about AgriFutures, a bit more about the statutory requirements behind what we have to meet. We have an industries section, so you can dive into any of the industries that we represent and look at the projects that we're delivering for them. We have our knowledge hub, which is where we're going to dive into today to have a look for those carbon resources. We have our opportunities portal. So this is for this is where we house any of our open calls, where we put our RFQs, but also the other programs that we deliver at AgriFutures, which I know will be talked about in future work. So I'll leave that one there. And then news and events. So that's really highlighting anything that's coming up that we're delivering. So for what we're trying to do, we're trying to find our carbon resources. So we're going to head into the knowledge hub on the website. And so we come to this page. Now we've got a series of filters here that we can dive through. So if you know the title of the specific report that you're looking for, you can type it in there. You can also, if we wanted to, we could type in carbon and click search, and it will bring up all the reports that contain carbon in them. If we decide to use the industry filter, we can look at all the different industries that are available that we represent, but we've also got the other programs that we deliver into as well. So we've got our Global Innovations Network team, which is a big conference that we run annually. We have workforce and leadership, so we do a lot of work in the workforce space. We have My Teams portal, which is the National Challenges and Opportunities section, and we have corporate publications, which is just a little bit broader. So that's the industry filter. We also have our popular topics, and this is the one that we're going to use mostly today. So if we open this up, we can see it's categorized into 3 key areas. So we have our environment and sustainability. So this is where carbon sits, and I'm actually going to go ahead and tick that filter. We've got our national trends, so you can scroll through these in your own time, but these are the topics that we're trying to address in some of our work that we're doing at the moment. And then we've also got what we've categorized as productivity, but this is really breaking it down into some of those key project areas that we've looked at. So I'll leave those for you guys to explore in the future, but let's go through the carbon one. So I've ticked the carbon box, and if I click go, it now brings up all the different works that we've done in the carbon space. And they're currently sorted by date order. So we can go through, and it's got a broad range. So we've got everything from our National Challenge and Opportunities projects, which are looking at both the Australian and international context of cross-sector forces, for example. We also have emerging industries. So we've got a project that talks about Asparagopsis, and that will reference carbon in there too. But for today's purpose, I've got 2 projects which I think are directly relevant, and hopefully I can find them. Great, we've got the first one here. So when you click on this, you get a brief project summary. So this is usually the executive summary, and so you get to read that. We've also, all of our reports can be printed into a hard copy that can be purchased through here. So we always take, to all the different conferences that we attend, we take hard copies of the reports that are relevant to that conference. And so I'd recommend, if you've got conferences and events too, and you want your producers or growers to have access to this, definitely go through this portal here. We also have an online version of each of the reports that we deliver. And so if you click download, this will take you to the online virtual report that you can read through for free as well. So you can scroll through here, and this will show you the overall report too. So if you don't want the hard copy, if you just want the virtual copy, then that's there as well. Now, for this specific tool in general, this is actually slightly unique because we've worked in conjunction with Australian Farm Institute to develop a decision tool for farmers around carbon farming opportunities. And so this is really to support Australian land managers in better understanding carbon farming opportunities and identify which might be best for their enterprise. So I actually thought, for the relevance of today, we can quickly run through the decision tool that we've developed with AFI. So clicking on that top link, it takes you here, and you'll have to click on this link here where it says access to the tool. So if I click on there, this opens up the decision tool that we've developed. Now, I was going to potentially take the risk of throwing it to the room to run through this as a live case study, but I think for the purpose of today, I've just created my own example. So we're going to say that I'm a farmer. I have a 1,200 hectare wheat cropping property in WA, so in the Western Australian wheat belt. I'm interested to learn about carbon opportunities, and I have a little bit of capital to spend to change some of my practices, but I don't have a huge amount, so I can't do anything life-changing. I don't need to get returns straight away, but I do need to see a return on my investment in the future. So that's the case study that we're going to do, and I'm just going to run through this tool. So this gives you this video gives us a broad understanding of what the tool's trying to achieve, and it touches on 5 key areas. So we have the Emissions Reduction Fund. So this is the Australian carbon credit market. We have private carbon markets. We have sustainability linked loans, which I know there's a session on tomorrow as well, so we won't dive into that one. We have carbon neutral certification, and then we have productivity gains. So what could potentially be gained by increasing carbon on your property. Now, I just want to start off by saying this tool isn't telling you what to do. It's providing that initial information to start to identify potential key areas that might fit and provide a next steps on, okay, you've identified a methodology that might be appropriate. Where can I then go to find out more information? So that's the purpose of this tool. So it's industry agnostic. It's high level, but it's to sort of begin that decision thinking process. So let's begin. Hang on, I have just returned back to homepage. Let's restart. So we're going from the beginning. This is how it opens up. So are you farming in Australia? Yes, I'm farming in Western Australia. What are your property rights regarding the land that you farm? Well, I own this farm over in WA, so I have freehold rights. But as you click through any of these, it sort of changes the different opportunities that you have available in the carbon space, depending on your context. So I'm just going to go to the freeholder/ownership rights. This then talks about have you engaged anyone who might also have an interest in this land? So I do have a mortgage, so I'll have to consider what my bank thinks about me converting part of my land to the carbon space if I decide to go down that route. So I'd click understand. But if I wasn't interested in something where I had to consider what other people were thinking about that, I could click on this option and it would cut out the opportunities that require engaging those other people and just show you what you can do specifically for yourself. But I'm going to click understand. Now, are you willing to be in a long-term contractual agreement? Well, all carbon projects have a sort of 25 to 100-year project permanence period. And we can see there's a bit more information here. That's a very long time. I don't know if I want to be locked in for that period of time at this present stage. So I'm just going to say it depends on the benefits and move on from there. Are you prepared to wait for payments? Well, yes, but I do need a return in the future. So I'm going to click yes. Are you willing to undertake new practices? Yeah, well, that's why I'm exploring this carbon opportunity to move forward. Are you prepared to undertake any regular benchmarking and ongoing sampling / measurement activities? Well, I assume that's a part of undertaking a carbon project. So I'm just going to say yes for now. Again, doesn't lock you into anything. Are you willing to be liable for maintaining the permanence of contracted emissions reduction? Well, actually, it sort of seems like a pretty risky thing to be liable for those carbon credits. So if something comes through and destroys my carbon project, I don't want to have to be liable to that. So I'm actually going to say no here. Would you be willing to partner with a company who would take on some of that risk? Well, if they're willing to support me in that process, then yeah, I would be willing. So then it sort of opens up and ask me, do I want to explore the Australian carbon credit market through the Emissions Reduction Fund, or do I want to look at, say, the private carbon markets? Let's just say the Emissions Reduction Fund for the sake of time. So it opens up this page and it shows you all the different carbon methodologies available. And it's got links to different websites, so you can find all the methodologies available here. You can actually find the next project I'm about to talk about, which is the Farmer's Handbook on carbon farming, or the on-farm carbon management. And it lists all the different methodologies here, but I have no idea which one's applicable to the farm that I have currently. So how do I choose a methodology? Brings up this page that talks about a project that we've developed, which has a decision support tree. So based on your industry, it breaks it down and shows you which ones are applicable. The Clean Energy Regulator, which is the regulatory body for carbon, also has a decision tree to support in that decision-making process of going, okay, which ones are actually applicable to my operation. And then CSIRO have a tool which enables you to very high level estimate the amount of carbon that you can sequester. This is just telling you that there's the Chubb review, which was an independent review. You can read about further on the Clean Energy Regulator's website. Are you operating in Queensland or in Western Australia? Well, yes, we're in the Western Australian wheat belt. Am I interested to be paid for producing co-benefits? Well, to be fair, I don't really know what those co-benefits are. But if I'm going to get more money, then sure, let's tick yes and see where it takes us. Great, so now it's providing me a case study of where co-benefits have been paid for. It talks about the Queensland opportunity, and it's talking about the WA opportunity as well, for where they can get paid additionally for co-benefits that they're delivering. So take me to more information on the carbon market. Do I have the capability to undertake a carbon project? Well, no, I'm a farmer and I'm busy. I don't have the time for that. So I'm just going to click no. Are you willing to partner with an organisation? Well, yeah, if they're going to do it for me, then I'm willing to partner with them. I have 1,200 hectares, so I'd say this is profitable. This is just an information page on aggregating, so aggregating across different properties. Not something that I'm probably interested in now, but could be worth a read. Is it important for your business that you're carbon neutral? I actually don't know yet. I'm sort of waiting for the markets to tell me that, and it hasn't quite indicated that yet. Do I sell directly to consumers? No, I sell bulk commodity. I'm just selling my wheat. And now it's talking about supply chain opportunities. So I'm not really interested in carbon neutrality just yet. I'm just looking to sell ACCUs potentially for extra income. Would I sell them now? Will I sell them straight away? Not entirely sure. Probably hold on to them to get the best price that's available. And again, this is just me making these decisions. So this is just an example case. You can go through and based on your decision and your specific opportunity, you can answer these questions as appropriate. I'm just running through, and this is my decision-making process. It's telling me to consult my legal and financial advisors. And then what it does is when you've come to the end where an opportunity could be present, it has a short video that you can click on to talk about next steps, to talk about opportunities in that space. It also does a quick benefit cost analysis of that opportunity, and then takes you about the key consideration and next steps as well. So that is what comes out, and this one is specific to the ERF, but it also comes out for carbon neutral for the private markets, for the sustainability linked loans, and for improving productivity, if they're decisions that you decide to make. So I'm going to leave this tool here just for now, but I thought I'd give you a quick overview of the tool. And I'd encourage you to pass this on, because producers will have different answers for each of those sections based on their risk, like how risk adverse they are, what their current context is, and what they're actually interested in. But for now, that's just a high level overview. So I'm just going to quickly click no thanks. That's it for me in this tool. No, I don't want to look anything more. And this is what comes up at the end. It shows you the different opportunities that we're going to be linked out. It shows you the accuracy of carbon, the time frame commitment, the costs, the legal and tax considerations and risks, and dealing with different third parties as well. So that's the tool. That's the project that we've delivered, and that's online now. That can be accessed through our website. Now, I just thought I'd take you back one step, and we'll go to the other project, as this is the decision tree project that I talked about. And let's see if we can find it again through going onto our website, going into the Knowledge Hub section, clicking the carbon filter, clicking go, and now getting all the different carbon projects once that loads. I actually think it's on the second page based on time. And it's this one here, A Farmer's Handbook to On-Farm Carbon Management. So this project is a project that we did back in 2022. And essentially it's designed to be given to producers so that they can get all the information they need from a broad range of websites in one source of information that's relevant to them. And it also has a decision tree that's supports them in that process. Now, it can be printed into an A5 spiral bound document. It's a really good, sturdy bit of document, so it'll survive in the farmer's ute, survive in the tractor. I know it survived in my work ute for a long time now. But if I just quickly open that up, I thought I'll show you the decision tree and some of the case studies that they've talked about here, as it's really useful. So if I just scroll back up to the top, this is the decision tree that we developed for carbon farming opportunities. So it dives into these categories here. So it dives into pastoral, intensive animal production, cropping, mixed farming, horticulture, sugarcane, horses, and oysters. And what it does is based on your operation, for example, if I've got a beef feedlot, I look at the intensive animal production, I look at the beef feedlot, and then it tells me the applicable methodologies that are available. So if I scroll to the next page, it has all the methodologies for carbon available here. And it tells me which ones from this next page are relevant to that specific industry. So for example, in the cropping example that I gave before, we have our cropping category. We're not a part of the Upper Darling section because we're in Western Australia. So we're a part of that rest of Australia piece. And depending on what operation you run, you have these different carbon methodologies available to you. Now, this is a 63-page, so this is just the high-level overview decision tree. We have all these opportunities with links to the pages of information. But essentially what the rest of the report does is it goes through and it provides an introduction to the emissions reduction through offsetting. It provides an introduction to the carbon cycle. It provides an introduction to the water cycle as well. It goes through looking at carbon farming as a practice and provides more information in detail on that. Sorry, excuse me, with diagrams. It then talks about carbon credits in more detail. So what actually is a carbon credit and what does that look like? It talks about how they're generated, when do you get credited, calculating your carbon credits, and some other information that you need to know when thinking about a carbon project. It then talks about the different carbon methodologies based on your risk preferences and what your preferences are around this, your engagement of cooperatives and external parties. It talks about any opportunities and risks involved with carbon farming, which I think are pretty critical when producers are thinking about how can they actually engage with the carbon market. And then it talks about some of the obligations that a producer might have or a land manager might have in the carbon space. It then goes to talk about the life cycle of what all the different carbon projects. And then we get to the section where it breaks down each of the carbon methodologies. So this is a tool specifically when I was managing all those farm properties that had carbon projects on them. I wish I had this because it would have saved me probably 30 hours of research because it had all the information that I needed in this document here. And so I definitely encourage to pass it on. But what this does, and I'll show you the first example, is essentially it pulls out from the carbon market it gives you the carbon farming management opportunity. So for example, this is the animal effluent management method. And what it does is it breaks it down into a brief summary or overview. It talks about the eligibility of your operation. It talks about the limitations of the methodology, the potential costs involved, the benefits, the risks, and the monitoring requirements for that specific carbon methodology. And what it does is, as a part of this report, it breaks down each of the methodologies that can be found in the carbon market and provides a high-level summary of those opportunities. But then what we decided to do was we decided to provide even more information on the most utilised carbon methodologies. So the most utilised carbon methodologies are your savanna fire management methods, your soil organic carbon, your human-induced regeneration, and your reforestation by environmental and mallee plantings. And what we did is we decided to dive even further and develop a participation guide in these areas. So we created a section on deciding on project details, preparing a project management plan, what activities need to be conducted, the monitoring requirements, and then how those carbon credits are actually calculated. And I think that was a really useful piece. A lot of the carbon projects that I did were around the reforestation and of environmental and mallee plantings. And so that would have been a really interesting section for myself in my previous roles. Then the report talks about next steps. So how do you get started having this information? So if you've read through this report and you've gone, oh yeah, there's a few that relate to my operation, where can I then go to find further information? So that's talked about there. These grants, they're currently out of date. We're about to revise this. So like I said at the start, this was developed in 2022, and we're just going through the process of updating it to reflect what's happened in 2024. Then to conclude the document, it has a case study section. So we've got a couple of different case studies here. We have a soil carbon case study. So it talks about the size, the actual activity that was used, the ACCUs issued to date and the ACCUs expected, and then the project permanence period. And it also does it for the beef cattle herd management methodology and the Savannah fire management methodology. So that's just a really interesting report that I thought I'd put on your radar because I think it's a really valuable piece of information that can be shared with producers. Now I've gone through that slide, and this slide. So this is where we're up to now. So what does this mean and what are we going to do? So we made a significant investment into carbon. We did this $2 million carbon initiative program. Where does AgriFutures go from here? What are we actually looking at doing? Well, as a part of that $2 million initiative, we ran what we called the Carbon Conversation Series. And this was to get an understanding of how Australians are seeing the carbon market and how the carbon market is impacting producers. So this was 13 what we called conversations, but essentially there were 13 workshops ran across Australia in Sydney, New South Wales, Melbourne, Queensland. We had one in Perth, so maybe some of you might have attended that too. We had them in Queensland, Wagga Wagga, Adelaide, Hobart, and it concluded in Canberra, which was a significant piece too I'll talk about in a sec. And there's about 300 people that participated in those carbon conversations. So 19% of them were corporate, 10% were producers, 43% were from the ag industry, 17% were university related, and 11% were from government. And what came through these conversations was that there was careful optimism in the room around the carbon market, but there are so many challenges and issues in the carbon market that people were quite nervous to participate. So one thing that was identified was there was a lack of collaboration between market participants, which seemed to minimise the amount of information sharing and build a level of distrust within the carbon market. There was also a lot of confusing and contradicting information coming from government, coming from service providers, from the next door neighbour, all those sort of different parties involved. There seemed to be so much confusing and contradicting information. No one knew what the source of truth was. And just the overall complexity as well. Like, it's a fairly complex market to be involved in. And this definitely fueled uncertainty around the carbon market. But as a part of each of these conversations, we held a workshop on how do we come up with solutions for this? What is the role of government? What is the role of industry? What is the role of individuals? How do we actually come to deliver solutions to these challenges? And so across the nation, what was actually widely accepted and viewed by everyone was that there needed to be a strategic vision and there needed to be a strategic implementation of these activities, but it needed to be locally led and by the people who are actually impacted by this. So it needed to be led by producers. It needed to be led by land managers. And it did need national support. So it needed to be supported and funded by the Commonwealth Works, but it needed to be led by the local community, because currently as it stands, the community haven't been engaged in a lot of the decisions that have been made around the carbon market. And people are wanting to be involved and wanting to have a say because it impacts their day-to-day operations and it's going to impact their future. So that was what came out of those carbon conversations. And so the final conversation was held in Canberra, and we actually presented to the department and to the different policymakers and said, this is what we've heard. This is what people in Australia are talking about. And what we committed to doing is we've committed to working with the department to deliver this strategic vision, to help the local community actually have their say in what's going on in the carbon market. And so we're working with the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry to deliver that vision, to get the national support, but the locally led approach to this, to the carbon market. And so that's where we're heading. That's what AgriFutures is looking at doing. We've done the initial carbon initiative program, and now we're really going to act as that facilitator of the future conversations and making sure the producer's voice is heard. Now, just conscious of time, being that we're just two under the running time sheet, I thought I'd quickly talk about how you can interact with our carbon resources, but also our resources in general too that aren't just carbon. So we have 3 ways that this can be done. One, through subscribing to our weekly and monthly newsletter. So the weekly newsletter talks about the different opportunities available. So there are different open calls, RFQs, participation workshops. A lot of the time we're trying to get producers into the room to have a say over some of the project work that we're doing. And then the monthly one is talking about the projects that we're delivered and some of the impact that we're having. So to subscribe, I'll just quickly show you how to do that. If I go back to our website, if you just look at the top right-hand corner, you have the subscribe button. If you click on this, I don't know if you can actually see the pop-up or not, but it'll have a pop-up and it has a weekly newsletter and the monthly. And so you put in your details, you click those 2 boxes, you click next, and that will subscribe you to the email chain. That's the first way to interact. The second one is to keep an eye out on our opportunities tab on the website. So if I go back to the website, we have this opportunities tab here. And if you click on the See All Funding Opportunities, this opens up the page and where we house all our open calls, our RFQs, and any funding opportunities, sponsorships as well. We quite often have grant programs that we run. And this is all up to date. So this is kept up to date as well. So definitely keep across this, and they'll be listed in our newsletter too. And essentially this will house where all our opportunities are. And so definitely keep an eye out, because this is how you can interact directly on the projects that we're doing. You can look for potential funding opportunities for yourselves, if that's a skill set that your organisation has. But I just wanted to flag that because that's a great way that growers and producer groups can get involved in the projects that we have, because quite often we're looking for that engagement, and it's listed up here in the opportunities tab. And so, for example, if I was to click on one of them, I know it's not quite related to the work that we're talking about, but this is what comes up. So we'll have a background of the project, the requirements that we're looking for, timelines, and then how to get involved. So that's another way to interact with the work that we have. Now, one final way is where all of our resources that we have on our website, not just carbon, but everything that we have on our website is publicly available. So feel free to share any links that we have on our website with your growers, with the groups that you're involved in, with your networks. And we're very happy to have the conversations in that space, because we're delivering great research and we want it to have as much impact as possible. So very happy for everyone to share the links that are publicly available there. So there are 3 ways that you can interact with the project work that we're doing. And so, yeah, that's it for my part of this presentation. So I might kick it back to the GGA guys. Callista?